not something that's causing injury. It's just my body adjusting and warming up. I had a theory the other day that if I ran every day, maybe it wouldn't happen. But the fatigue from running every day would probably kick my butt at the moment. So then you get to that mental battle that I mentioned, that little voice inside your head, that little voice that I'll be going to go out for a long, hard ride like I did on Saturday, where I know it's going to be really unpleasant, lots of climbing, and I'm trying to come up with every excuse in the book for why I don't need to do this ride. I'm sure there's some reason I need to go home and I can jump on Zwift and do it on Zwift instead of being outside. Unfortunately, my coach doesn't accept most of my excuses. But most of us have that little voice inside our head that you'll be running along and you get those negative thoughts. Now, those negative thoughts can actually have quite a large impact. It's that when that alarm goes off in the morning and you know you're supposed to get up and go for a run, and that little voice is saying, I think you need more sleep today. Why don't you go this afternoon? Only you know it will never happen. If you don't get up and go now, you won't have time to do it in the afternoon. But there's that little voice inside your head suggesting that you go back to sleep for a bit. You can always do it later. That, I think, is what holds most people back, being able to overcome that little voice. Best run I ever had, I was literally yelling and swearing at that little voice, and it wasn't very polite what I told him. But I think if you can change that mindset, the way you think, you can overcome a lot. I have friends that I do stuff with, and they'll say, I could never do this, or I could never do that. But that's that little voice inside their head telling them that. Now, if you can change it around and tell yourself that I really want to do this, I'm going to find a way to make it happen, well, that's a positive thought inside your head. And those negative thoughts often is what's stopping us from achieving what we really want to do. And I do believe most people are capable of doing a lot more than we think we are. My coach once said to me that most people have a security net. It's where they'll push themselves to. They know that they can go a bit further, but it's that, I guess, like a security blanket. And they don't want to go past that because they don't want to risk doing themselves any physical harm. In my case, he said my security blanket was a bit bigger than most people. So in other words, I was holding myself back too much. I had to learn to push further because I had to learn for myself what I was capable of, overcoming that little voice that was telling me to back off all the time, because it might hurt. Well, sometimes it is going to hurt, but you're not going to learn, and you're not going to learn what your boundary is unless you push, and that comes by basically ignoring that little voice inside your head. Now, did anybody have any questions, by the way, as we're going? I know I'm probably sort of rambling a bit. I sort of have notes about what I was going to say, but they sort of lead to tangents. To overcome that little voice in my head, I actually use distraction a lot. If I'm swimming, when I first started swimming, I used to sing in my head, or listen to things, or if I've got something like this coming up, I'll actually be planning what I'm going to do or say or something like that as I'm doing it. Saturday before the really big ride that I had to do, my coach told me to look around and enjoy the view. And yes, I must say, when I got to the top of the hill, the view was pretty amazing. But it took a bit more distraction to get up that hill. But distracting yourself can be pretty good when you want to distract yourself from all the negative and just look around you. One of the things I enjoy about going for a run now when I'm outside is actually the solitude. getting away from work and family and kids and actually being on my own. I appreciate that time on my own. When I'm on Zwift, I appreciate the fact that I can chat with you guys and talk, and that's a really cool distraction. You've got lots going on around you. If you're doing an interval, well, focus on each interval, rather than the bigger picture with how far you're running or how fast you've got to go. So I quite like doing the interval stuff because, yeah, that's a really good distraction. Anything that takes your focus away from what's worrying you about the workout and about the run. I went through a really bad patch, as I said, where running scared me. I used to have nightmares about it. And I think mostly because of the pain in my ankles and the discomfort and stuff. If I push really, really hard, I physically am not capable of taking in enough oxygen because my ribs don't expand, so my lungs don't expand properly. So everything I do has to be really, really slowly. And I'd do workouts or I'd be pushing myself at the end of a race, and that breathing scares me. So there was a lot about running that I found quite terrifying. And I would see it on my training program, and I would have panics about it for days on end leading up to that run. And they were just training runs. It could be half an hour training run, and it would really throw me to the point that my coach told me not to look ahead to what I had to do during the week, just to look each day. And what I found recently is I actually found a hypnotherapy thing that I could download about running, and you sit there and you listen to it. And I had to find a way to get past all those negative thoughts in my head, and I tried everything else, and this actually worked surprisingly better than I thought it would. I think I only listened to it about 3 or 4 times over the space of a week. And I wouldn't say I enjoy running more, but it's gotten rid of some of that really negative stuff that was there that I just didn't want to go for a run because I knew it was going to hurt. And it was all these negative stuff from probably a few years ago, whereas it's not so bad now. And it helped me to relax and not wind myself up over going for a run. And I've used that a few times with a few different things. But that was the biggest thing, was just that real stress over it. I wanted to enjoy it. People talk about how they enjoy going for a run, they get that runner's high. I hadn't found it yet. I probably still haven't. But every so often I have the odd run that I do enjoy. Recently I've been checking out some of our local trails, like in the bush. I tend to get lost a lot. It's been half my time trying to find my way where I'm supposed to be, using the little maps. But I've found I started to actually find a way to enjoy it at last, which is really cool. Usually I find concentrating on the goal too, what I'm trying to achieve. As I said, like if it's an interval or something like that, when it comes to just going out on the trail, often it's just about actually enjoying where I am. I had a friend pass away recently, and he did a lot for this country with natives. So I usually have my phone with me, so I've been looking at native plants and trees and flowers as I go, and occasionally I'll stop and take a photo, and the idea is I'll come back and look them up and find out what they are. So I found something that I can do, something enjoyable, makes the run a bit more meaningful. Sometimes it's just going to a new location and exploring something. I know a lot of you are on Zwift as well, so sometimes it can be just completing a new route. I think I've only got one more to do, but it's a long one and it's going to take me a while. I'll get there one day. Sometimes it can be just meeting up with friends on there and going for a run together, as I said, and just chatting as you run. It doesn't always have to be hard out, but I think keeping it enjoyable so that you enjoy what you're doing. Keeping it consistent too. So like if you're going for a run, if you want to do an event, you have to train consistently for it. So if you want your running to improve, you can't just go out there once a week and try to smash out a big run. It has to be consistent. I tend to do 3 a week. I do 2 shorter ones and then a long one, which at the moment is, I think, roughly 2 to 2.5 hours on a Sunday. I usually start with a really good warm-up and a cool-down, and then in between I try to push a bit more. The long ones I tend to go more outside onto the trails, purely because I enjoy that more, and if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to want to go, or I'm going to cut the time short, or, well, try not to. But if I can make it enjoyable and go somewhere that's interesting, sometimes I'll meet up with a friend. We've only just been able to start doing that again because we're in lockdown. But yesterday we found a nice little pathway near the water. Samantha had her scooter and we just were exploring a completely different area, which was really cool. But if I don't run for a while, it gets worse, so I have to stay consistent. I think my longest run on the build up to IronMan was about 22 Ks, and that's the longest, apart from the IronMan, that's the longest race I've ever done, was a half marathon. Takes a fair bit out of me. I haven't quite cracked 3 hours. As I said, I'm not fast, so because I'm slow, it takes a lot longer. Most people can walk at the pace I run at, to put it that way. I've learnt that if I can keep things slow and steady, I can just keep going for a lot longer. I was going to talk about managing work and family. What you can't see behind me is Samantha curled up on the floor with her pink blanket. She's just got up. It's 5:30 a.m. We're going to be going for a swim after this to the beach. The pools haven't reopened yet, so because it's nearly summer, we can swim at the beach. We've got wetsuits. She gets up and comes with us. Her reward is usually something yummy for breakfast afterwards. Sometimes she'll join us, sometimes she won't, sometimes she'll just sleep. Usually we try to include her as much as we can. It's probably a little bit easier that Tony and I both do the same sort of training, so we can kind of plan everything around each other. Water temperature at the moment, I think, is about 18 to 20 degrees, I think, roughly. Keeping in mind we've got special swim wetsuits, which are quite warm, but definitely warm enough to swim in togs. Tony and Sam had a play at the beach on Sunday and they were swimming in togs, because it's beginning of summer here and it's actually been really, really hot. The beach at the moment is beautiful conditions. It's like swimming in a swimming pool, but the water's flat and calm and salty. Tony's just getting himself ready. No, I'm very much the same. I don't like cold water so much. I prefer warm water. My body reacts better to warm water than cold. But I do find that getting in and swimming is really, really good recovery. For anyone running long distance, get in the water, do some stretching. You'll be amazed, especially if it's warm water. If you've got a sparkle at home, have a soak, relax your muscles. You'll find your recovery is really, really good. If you've got a bike, sit on your bike and just spin your legs fast. Helps with the getting rid of the lactic acid. It's most of my recovery is either through the swimming or the cycling for my running. So really, really good recovery that way. Yeah, so we include Sam as much as we can. Tony's a bit paranoid about me getting lost on my long trail runs, so he's been coming occasionally on a Sunday, and Sam will bring her mountain bike. And if we get to stairs, Tony's got to carry them up, so that's his strength workout. But they'll come with me. Probably do about I think my longest was 13 and a half. Well, that's off-road, so that's a bit harder than on the road, but my knees don't like the road very much. And we'll actually make it, if there's somewhere that's got a park, they might stop at the park and have a play while I continue on for a bit. So we kind of try to include her as much as we can. And when our other kids, they're all adults, have left home, but when they were at home, they were very much included too. It's always really good, I find, for kids to actually see what we're doing.